What's going on, everybody? Thank you for clicking on the video. Today, we are going to be talking about 2025 rookies. And this is something new that I'm trying, so let me know what you think of it in the comments. It's essentially my rookie big board. Now, there are rankings and tiers that go into this, but it's not a super in-depth video. I do some of those videos, the all 22 breakdowns. We do mock drafts where we go a little bit more in depth, but this is just kind of my thought process right now of my rankings process. And again, all feedback is encouraged in the comments. Like, subscribe the video, all that good stuff. But this is just a list and some justifications why, players are where they are, I suppose, and why they're in the tier that they're in. And so let's start with round one. This is going to be Superflex, and it's going to be a top 36. This is what the rookie big board is going to be. And there's no shocker at the top. Ashton Genty, I think he's in a tier of his own. The one change I did make based on all 22 tape, based on their production in college, is Travis Hunter is at the 102. And I know some of you are probably thinking, Seth, you're crazy. We don't even know if he's going to play wide receiver. And that's true. But the evaluation is this. If both Travis Hunter and Tet McMillan were going to play wide receiver, and I went back and forth on this quite a bit. If they were both going to play wide receiver, who's the better player? And the better player to me is Travis Hunter. And I'm not saying that Tet McMillan is a scrub. I have him at 3. He's the wide receiver 2 in the class right now. And this could change. This could change if Travis Hunter says, you know what, I want to primarily be a cornerback. If that comes out next week, then obviously this is going to change, and Tet McMillan's going to go back up to wide receiver 1, and Travis Hunter's going to move down the rankings. But this is where we are right now, and a lot can change, and I get it, but I feel very strongly if Travis Hunter said tomorrow that he's going to primarily play wide receiver, he would quite easily be the wide receiver 1 in the class. And I think he even belongs in the tier with Ashton Genty, but let me know what you think in the comments. So then we get to the quarterbacks. Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders. I have Cam Ward just above Shedeur Sanders. It's very close. I think Cam Ward's just a little bit more NFL ready. Omarion Hampton in that tier 3 is a bruiser of a running back. Really like his game. In between the tackles, runner with speed and size. And then we go down to tier 4 where we have Caleb Johnson. Maybe one of the more polarizing, I don't know if I want to say polarizing, but one of the more hot prospects that really boosted his stock this year. I have him at the top of tier 4. And then we have some of the wide receivers. We have Burden, Emeka Egbuka, Trey Harris. And the evaluation between Burden and Egbuka is very similar to the evaluation between Ladd McConkey and Brian Thomas Jr. last year. And again, I don't know if either one of these players are as good as Ladd McConkey or Brian Thomas Jr., but I feel as though Emeka Egbuka is the double. I feel he's very solid. He's very good. Luther Burden is the riskier pick with a lot more upside. And in Dynasty, I typically shoot for the upside, which is why Luther Burden is here. Quinshon Judkins, feel like he would be a perfect fit for the AFC North. He's just a bruiser of a running back. A lot of big-bodied running backs in this class. And then Trey Harris. A lot of upside with Trey Harris, and Travion Henderson starts tier 5 and rounds out the first round. So now let's go to round 2, shall we? Round 2. One of my favorite prospects, probably going to have a bunch of them in Dynasty, is Nicholas Singleton, even though he's technically not the best running back in his own backfield. That's okay. He's playing for a big program, and he's been super effective, and what I like most about him is he's a really good pass catcher. And then we go to Xavier Restrepo, who really reminds me of this year's Ricky Pearsall. Just that, he's the type of wide receiver that can run really good routes and get open. Really like him a lot. And then I didn't expect to like Tyler Warren as much as I did. But I like him a lot. He feels like an old school tight end. I think I've described it as he feels like you're watching football back in the 1980s. He can block, and what he's really good at, and I've seen George Kittle do this, Tucker Kraft do this, he's really good at, the pretend to block and then go out for a route, which is very tricky for a defense to cover. So I think his game is going to be really conducive to the NFL. Now, how much are they going to ask him to block? That's going to be a big question for fantasy football, but it's worked out pretty well for, like I said, Tucker Kraft, George Kittle, those types of tight ends. And then we get into a tier of running back that I actually really like. Dylan Sampson and Devin Neal. I'm probably going to be above consensus on those two players because Dylan Sampson feels like a Keaton Mitchell, like a Devon Achane. Now, I'm not saying he's going to be as good or effective as those guys were or are, because Keaton Mitchell averaged like 18,000 yards per carry in the brief time that he's played when he hasn't been injured. But he strikes me as the new age running back, the undersized, speedy, shifty type. And then we have Devin Neal, who's just all around good and a patient runner with good vision. Kind of reminds me a little of Le'Veon Bell. I know I'm not saying he is Le'Veon Bell, but just watch him play. The patience that he runs with kind of gives me Le'Veon Bell vibes. And then Jordan James, who I think is great at cutting, reading the offensive lineman and getting upfield. And then my quarterback 3 in the class, Jackson Dart. And this is, I'm not too big of a fan of this quarterback class, which you can probably tell. This is quarterback 3, and we're in the middle of the second round, and quarterback is king in Superflex. We all know this. Jackson Dart, to me, just feels like the most NFL-ready guy, and I'm early in my quarterback evaluations. I've just skimmed the surface of the All-22 tape. Much more work to do, but right now, Jackson Dart, for me, is the quarterback 3 in the class. Let me know what you think in the comments. And then Colston Loveland, like his game a lot as the tight end 2. Brashard Smith, then we get into some more quarterbacks. Jalen Milroe, Quinn Ewers. Jalen Milroe, just from a fantasy perspective, I question how good of an actual quarterback he is. And Quinn Ewers, I guess in the right system could be good, but I'm not super high on either of them. But I do acknowledge they are quarterbacks. I'm not going to lie. I've struggled with their ranking with my ranking. That's just a ranking that I've struggled with because there are players that are ranked below them that I really still like. And Kyron Lacey is one of those players. And I haven't dug super deep into the film with Kyron Lacey, but from what I've seen, he looks like another one of these. I shouldn't even say that. He doesn't look like another one of these LSU wide receivers because he's not Jamar Chase or Malik Neighbors, or he's not that. But he looks pretty solid. He looks pretty good on film. And every time I watch him, I get the urge to move him up the rankings. And he's late second round. He's another one that I think could fly up my rankings once we get deeper into the film. And then we go to round 3. So let's just go to round 3 here. And Jalen Royals at the top, very raw prospect, very flashy, dealing with a foot injury that kept him out of this season. I think in the right system he could be really, really good. I feel like a lot of these players, Isaiah Bonds, very similar to that. Ollie Gordon, I'm still hanging on. I'm still hanging on to what I've seen from him in the past. The production, the pass catching ability, the size, the speed. It feels like somebody's going to take a chance on him earlier than we might expect, and I'm still a really big fan of his game, even though I know the production's dropped off. And then a guy that I maybe have too low right now, and again, as always, feel free to let me know what you think in the comments. Alik Ayumanor, and I hope I'm saying that name right, but he had one of the best games I've seen anybody have against Travis Hunter. When I was breaking down Travis Hunter's film as a cornerback, Alik Ayumanor, the Stanford game, really gave him some issues. Alik Ayumanor is a bigger wide receiver with speed. His projected 40 time, 4.42 at 6'2", 210 pounds, and that's according to NFL Draft Buzz. And there's other wide receivers I like in this class that aren't ranked here too. Jaden Higgins is intriguing, another big-bodied wide receiver from Iowa State. And I've talked briefly about Isaiah Bond. Again, the speed there with Texas. I don't know where they find these speed guys, but they always seem to have them. And then the hot name right now is DJ Giddens from Kansas State. And again, I haven't dug super deep into the film, but what I've seen, I've liked. And that's another name that could easily rise up my rankings. But for now, I have him conservatively ranked in the third round. And again, we have some other wide receivers. Torrey Holton from Colorado State ran a lot of drag routes. Like they schemed him open to manufacture him touches at Colorado State because he's one of their better players. Ty Felton from Maryland, kind of the same story. A bigger guy, 6'2", 180 pounds, kind of. I'm not saying he is Keon Coleman, but he's very similar body type. He's a lot lighter, but similar speed too, and just didn't. Some websites and some people are a lot higher on Ty Felton than I am. And you had the Oregon wide receivers, Tez Johnson, Evan Stewart there in tier 8, and some of the other players, and I've mentioned some of them. Khalil Mullings is at the bottom there. Raheem Sanders is interesting from South Carolina. Like that's an intriguing player to me. Jack Beck, who's sitting in there. Actually, I have him ranked at the 305. Gives me Danny Amendola vibes. Another wide receiver. He kind of reminds me of that Bears wide receiver who got fined for the shoes. Edgar Bennett or Earl Bennett or something like that. It kind of gives me Earl Bennett vibes. I think that's who the player was, but anyway, I'm sure you'll let me know if that's wrong in the comments. But this third round, I'm not going to lie to you, is probably going to be the round that changes the most as more information comes out, because I really like a lot of these players. Elik Ayumanor is a perfect example. Jalen Royals, Jack Beck. These are guys that I feel are more polished players aside from, well, not Jalen Royals. He's really raw. Shouldn't have mentioned him with those other players, but Elik Ayumanor, Jack Beck, I feel are more polished players that are a little bit more NFL ready than some of these other guys, like a Jalen Royals type. So again, interesting stuff. A lot of good prospects, I think, in this class. I think it's pretty strong at the top at running back and wide receiver. I think there's some good quarterbacks in here, although I'm not super high on the depth of this quarterback class. I think Cam Ward could be pretty good. Sanders is interesting. And then some of those other wide receivers in the first round and running backs like in the early second round, late first round, even in the middle of the second round with a Devin Neal, Dylan Sampson, Tyler Warren. Those are all intriguing players. So again, a lot to cover yet in this class, but I think we'll leave it there for now. If you like this video, leave a like on it, subscribe to the channel. Again, the first iteration of the Rookie Big Board 1.0, according to Seth Dewald. Let me know what you think, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Be good, everybody, and happy holidays.